In the depths of German police archives lies a case file that challenges everything investigators thought they knew about missing persons. What began as a routine disappearance in 1973 became something far more disturbing when the evidence started appearing in impossible places at impossible times. Before diving in, hit subscribe to stay connected with our investigations. It was October 15th, 1973, in the small Bavarian town of Berchtesgaden, Germany. The morning mist clung to the Alpine foothills as 24-year-old Karola Wagner prepared for what should have been an ordinary hiking trip into the surrounding mountains. The young woman, a biology student at the University of Munich, had planned to collect plant specimens for her thesis on alpine flora. Karola was known for her methodical nature and careful preparation. Friends described her as someone who never took unnecessary risks, always informing others of her exact route and expected return time. On that crisp autumn morning, she told her landlady, Frau Brenner, that she would be hiking the well-marked Kallerstein Trail and would return before sunset. The trail Karola chose was considered one of the safer routes in the region. Local authorities maintained it regularly, and dozens of hikers used it weekly without incident. Weather conditions were favorable that day, with clear skies and temperatures hovering around 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Nothing suggested the events that would soon unfold. When Karola failed to return that evening, Frau Brenner contacted the local police. By the following morning, a search team consisting of 12 experienced mountain rescue volunteers had assembled at the trailhead. What they discovered during their initial sweep defied logical explanation. Approximately 3 kilometers up the trail, searchers found Karola's backpack hanging from a pine branch roughly 4 meters above the ground. The pack was completely intact, with all her research materials, food, and water still inside. However, the branch showed no signs of being climbed, and no footprints or disturbed vegetation indicated how the backpack had reached such a height. More puzzling was the discovery of Karola's hiking boots, found neatly placed side by side on a large boulder nearly half a kilometer from where the backpack was located. The boots showed normal wear patterns consistent with the hike up to that point, but their placement appeared deliberate, almost ceremonial. The boulder itself bore no footprints or other traces of human presence. Search teams expanded their efforts over the following days, covering an area of 15 square kilometers. On the 4th day, they made a discovery that would haunt investigators for decades. Hidden beneath a fallen log, wrapped in what appeared to be birch bark, they found Karola's field notebook. The final entries, written in her distinctive handwriting, contained observations that made no scientific sense. The last legible entry, dated the day of her disappearance, described plant species that did not exist in the Bavarian Alps. Karola had meticulously documented flowers with metallic petals and trees that appeared to grow downward into the earth rather than upward toward the sky. Most disturbing were her sketches of what she termed walking stones, rock formations that seemed to move independently across the landscape. Handwriting experts confirmed the entries were genuine, written by Karola herself. Botanical specialists consulted by police stated that the described flora bore no resemblance to any known species, either indigenous or invasive. The precision of the scientific terminology suggested genuine observation rather than fantasy or mental breakdown. As weeks passed without finding Karola, investigators began receiving reports from other hikers in the area. Multiple witnesses claimed to have seen a young woman matching Karola's description, walking the same trail, always at twilight, always alone. These sightings occurred with disturbing regularity, sometimes multiple times per week, continuing for months after her disappearance. What made these reports particularly unsettling was their consistency. Witnesses described seeing Karola wearing the same green jacket and carrying the same style of notebook she had on the day she vanished. Yet she appeared oblivious to attempts at communication, walking past other hikers without acknowledgement or response, as if they were invisible to her. Local police detective Heinrich Müller, assigned to the case, documented 17 separate witness reports over a 6-month period. All described identical behavior. The figure would appear near sunset, walking steadily uphill along the trail, and would vanish from sight whenever witnesses attempted to approach or call out to her. The investigation took an even stranger turn when authorities examined photographs taken by other hikers in the area during the weeks following Karola's disappearance. 3 separate photographs, taken by unrelated individuals on different dates, showed what appeared to be the same female figure in the background of their scenic shots. The figure matched Karola's height and build, but her face remained obscured or turned away in each image. Photography experts analyzed the images for signs of double exposure or manipulation, but found none. The photographs appeared authentic, yet they documented the presence of someone who should not have been there. Each image showed the figure in a different location along the trail, suggesting movement and purpose rather than a static anomaly. Perhaps most disturbing was the discovery made by a geology team conducting unrelated research in the area 6 months after Karola's disappearance. While taking soil samples, they uncovered what appeared to be pages from a field notebook buried approximately 30 centimeters beneath the surface. The paper showed signs of recent burial, yet the handwriting matched samples from Karola's earlier academic work. These newly discovered pages contained observations that seemed to continue where her last known entries had ended. They described geological formations that shifted position during observation and documented the presence of underground chambers that appeared and disappeared without explanation. The writing grew increasingly erratic toward the final entries, with some words trailing off mid-sentence as if the writer had been suddenly interrupted. Geological surveys of the areas described in these buried notes revealed nothing unusual: standard soil composition, typical rock formations, and no evidence of the underground spaces Karola had allegedly documented. Yet the specificity of her geological terminology suggested genuine field observation rather than fabrication. The case file grew thicker with each passing month as more anomalous evidence surfaced. A forest ranger reported finding freshly broken plant stems arranged in precise spiral patterns at various locations along the trail. The arrangements appeared regularly, always in areas where witnesses had reported seeing the mysterious figure, yet no human tracks were ever found nearby. Local botanist Dr. Elizabeth Hoffman examined these patterns and noted that the plant selection showed deep knowledge of local flora. The arrangements included specimens from different elevations and seasonal growing periods, suggesting either extensive local knowledge or collection over an extended time frame. Most puzzling was the inclusion of plant varieties that typically grew kilometers away from where they were found. Detective Mueller's investigation revealed one final piece of evidence that defied explanation. During a routine examination of the original crime scene nearly a year after Karola's disappearance, investigators discovered her student identification card wedged between rocks in a location that had been thoroughly searched multiple times. The card showed no signs of weathering, despite having been exposed to a full alpine winter. More unsettling was the discovery that the identification card's photograph had somehow changed. While the card itself was authentic, bearing the correct university seals and identification numbers, the photograph no longer showed Karola's face clearly. The image had become blurred and indistinct, as if the photographic emulsion had somehow degraded in a pattern that obscured only the facial features, while leaving the rest of the image intact. University records confirmed that Karola's identification card had originally contained a clear, standard identification photograph. Yet, multiple witnesses, including university officials who had processed the original card, could no longer recall specific details of Karola's appearance when questioned by investigators. The official investigation was quietly suspended after 14 months due to lack of concrete leads. Detective Mueller's final report noted the unprecedented nature of the evidence and recommended that the case remain open indefinitely. However, the file was transferred to a restricted archive, accessible only to senior investigators with special clearance. Unofficial sightings continued for several more years, though with decreasing frequency. The last documented report came from a mountain rescue volunteer in 1978, who claimed to have observed a female figure matching Karola's description near the original trail location. As with previous sightings, attempts to make contact proved unsuccessful. Local hiking guides began advising visitors to avoid the Karola Trail during twilight hours, though they rarely explained their reasoning. The trail remained officially open, but usage declined significantly as word of the strange occurrences spread through the hiking community. What do you think happened to Karola Wagner during those final moments on the Karola Trail, and how do you explain the impossible evidence that continued to surface long after her disappearance? Subscribe to explore more cases where reality itself seems to bend around the unexplained.